there is something that we value more. There is something that we desire more. Not to the extent that we become sociopaths, but to the extent that we are willing to endure the displeasure and disappointment of men because of that something that is more important. That's, amen. Secondly, because I am a native Los Angelino, and if Los Angeles pounds anything into us, it is that we want to be liked. We desperately want to be liked. Now, the reason that people think I don't care whether or not people like me is because I have a tendency to say things that, on occasion, you don't even know what I'm going to say yet. On occasion, could be controversial to some people, to most people. But it's not because I don't care if I'm liked. I do care. And not just, I'm glad that my wife likes me, that my children like me, my dogs like me, my mama likes me. Beyond that, it gets a bit sketchy, but I do want to add to that list. But in all seriousness, as Christians, if we are not careful, we can fall into the trap of shaving off the edges of the truth so that we can be liked. And our text this morning deals with that. It really gets to the heart of that. To the heart of our desire for people to like us and our desire for people to, beyond that, like God. Amen? I mean, we want them to like us, but even more than that, we want them to like God. And if we're not careful, we will do things that we believe can achieve that on God's behalf. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, there is a frame here around the section that we're going to look at. We're going to look at verses 18 to 25. But Paul starts in 1 Corinthians 1, 10 through 17, dealing with divisions in the church. Then he comes back to that issue again in chapter 3, verses 1 to 23, dealing with divisions in the church. In the middle of that, in 1 Corinthians 1, 18 through 2, 16, he talks about the proclamation of the crucified Christ, framed between this discussion about divisions in the church. And divisions among Christians often come down to two issues. Number one, the people whom we like. So we divide according to whom we like. I am of Apollos, I am of Cephas, I am of Paul. I like this person. I follow this person. I align with this person. But sometimes we divide, not necessarily over who we like, but over who we think makes the world like us. This is why we just get so out of sorts if we find out that some famous actor or musician or athlete is a Christian. Have you heard that so-and-so's a believer? Wow. It's amazing. It's as though we think that the people who don't like God will find out that whatever famous actor or athlete or musician is a Christian, and we will come to them and we will say, really? You like that? You like how he did that? You like how she did that? Christian. And they'll say, wait a minute. I take back every negative thing I've ever said about Jesus, because no, it doesn't work that way. If anything, they'll take away being a fan of that person rather than change what they believe about God. We want to be liked. Sometimes to a fault. But the frame around this discussion looks like this. In 1:17, Paul says, "For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, and not with words of eloquent wisdom, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of its power." In other words, he says he was careful, even with the way that he presented the gospel, because he did not want the way he presented the gospel to interfere with the power of the cross. And at the end of the frame, in 3:18, we read, "Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in this age, let him become a fool, that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. So let no one boast in men, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or the present or the future. All are yours, and you're Christ's, and Christ is God's." You see, the point is not that we don't want to be liked. The point is that as followers of Christ, there is something that we value more. There is something that we desire more. Not to the extent that we become sociopaths, but to the extent that we are willing to endure the displeasure and disappointment of men because of that something that is more important. That something that is more significant. That something that is more weighty for us. And that something is the wisdom of our foolish gospel. Join me in looking at our text today, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning at verse 18. 1 Corinthians 1, beginning at verse 18. It reads, "For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men." The wisdom of our foolish gospel. Those of us who represent the gospel, those of us who believe the gospel, those of us who proclaim the gospel are very familiar with the fact that the world at large, that the vast majority of humanity believes that the gospel is foolishness. But maybe they'll pat us on the head and they'll say how cute it is that we are such faithful people. But beyond that, they think that what we believe is sheer nonsense. And to them, that is exactly what it is. Why is it? Well, first of all, because the wisdom of the gospel is not equally available to all. Let me say that again. the wisdom of the gospel is not equally available to all. Now, that's one of those statements that makes people think that I don't want to be liked. Because it is rather offensive, is it not, to say that the wisdom of the gospel is not equally available to all, especially when I claim to know and understand the wisdom of the gospel. It's almost like I'm saying that I believe I'm better than other people, but that's because you don't understand the wisdom of the gospel. If you understood the wisdom of the gospel, you would know I'm saying nothing of the sort. But the fact of the matter is, the wisdom of the gospel is not equally available to all. Look at verse 18. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Two groups of people here. Those who are perishing and us who are being saved. To those who are perishing, the gospel is folly. To us who are being saved, it is the power of God. It is not equally available to all. There are two groups in this passage. At one point, Paul talks about those who are perishing and us who are being saved. At another point, he talks about Jews and Gentiles, or Jews and Greeks. But essentially, what he's referring to is two groups of people. One group of people that understand the gospel and view the gospel as the power of God, and another group of people who don't understand the gospel and because of that, view the gospel as folly. There's something at work here. And it's not what we think it is. It's not demographic. It's not about socioeconomics. It's not about ethnicity or race. It's not about nationality. It's not about education. There is no chart or graph that we could come up with to explain the distinction or the difference between people who believe the gospel and see it as the power of God and those who see the gospel as folly. Because God calls people from every nation and tribe and kindred and tongue, from every walk of life. And because of that, we can't say that everyone, if they would do X, that everyone, if they had this level of intelligence, that everyone, if they had this level of desire, that everyone, if they had this level of education. No, it is not equally accessible to all. And for those of you who are thinking it, let me go ahead and expose the elephant in the room. It's not fair. It's not fair. The Bible doesn't claim that it is fair. Fair would be that all of us die and go to hell. Amen? That would be fair. So no, it's not fair that God saves people at all. That's not fairness, that's mercy. Amen? Trust me, you don't want God to deal with you on the basis of what's fair. If God deals with you on the basis of what's fair, there are things you thought, said, and did on yesterday for which you should have been put to death in your sleep last night. It's not fair that you stole that last breath from God. I would say you borrowed it, but you're never going to give it back. So no, it's not fair. But this is not about fairness. Listen to this in John chapter 12, verses 36 to 40. While you have the light, this is Jesus speaking, while you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of light. When Jesus said these things, he departed and hid himself from them. Though he had done so many signs before them, they still did not believe him, so that the words spoken by the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. Lord, who has believed what he has heard from us? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? That phrase is key. To whom has it been revealed? Not who was smart enough to figure it out, but to whom has it been revealed? Therefore, they could not believe, for again Isaiah said, he has blinded their eyes